Hello friends, my name is Bintou and welcome back to my channel. In fact, those of you that are still with me after being AWOL for like several months, and a special welcome and thank you to you. It has been a while since I actually picked up the camera and sat down to film. And really the honest answer is just work got in the way, and between balancing work and personal life, YouTube kind of fell by the wayside. But I have decided that I need to make more of a priority because I actually really did miss filming and editing and interacting with some of the people that regularly watch my videos in the comments. And I know some of you have like reached out to me on Insta or on Goodreads, and I've seen those messages, and I just missed being on here. So we're back and I'm filming a couple videos, and so we'll have some more content for sure. Actually, over the past couple months, I've been reading fewer books than I probably have in the first half of the year. I had already met my reading goal for the year, which is quite nice. And actually, I might still reach somewhere near 100 books this year. We'll see. I've been ramping it up more. I feel like I had like a 5-day Thanksgiving break, and that gave me a lot of time to like really set my priorities, particularly like that glass ball slash, I guess not glass ball analogy, where I kind of really need to let the things that can wait just wait and just do the things that I make a priority that can't always be work all the time. Yeah, so we're working on that and we'll see how that goes. I would like to make it my resolution for 2022 to get back into my consistent posting that I really did a very good job holding on to my first year on YouTube. Anyway, so this video by the title is going to be a recent reads. So I'm going to be talking about all of the thriller books specifically that I have read in the past couple months that I haven't been on YouTube to talk about. And actually most of my reading for the past couple of months has been thriller or romance, because again, those are like my favorite genres. And so when I want to read just purely for enjoyment, which has been what my reading has been about for the past couple months, because life has been so crazy, I pretty much will lean toward thriller or romance. I'll be filming another recent reads for all the romance books that I've read over the past couple months. And I'm currently in the middle of a thriller, and I'm filming a vlog for that as well. So stay tuned and we'll go ahead and get started with this video. All of my reading has been on my Kindle as always, so I actually don't have physical copies of any of these books. I've been reading all entirely ebook, and actually I feel like I'm just 100% an ebook Kindle reader. Like I've been trying to fight it. I re-signed up for Book of the Month when they had that $5 promotion to sign up, and those credits are still waiting there. I'm gonna use them eventually, but to be honest, even like the few Book of the Months that I've added over the past couple months, they've just been sitting there because I can't bring myself to pick up a physical book. And I know that Amazon just came out with some new Kindles, and I actually got a hold of the new Kindle Paperwhite. It hasn't arrived yet, but when that does, I want to play with it and then compare it to the Kindle Oasis. I think that'll be a cool video, and I'll be working on that later. Anyway, rambling, let's get into the video. All right, so the first book that I'm gonna talk about is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. And this is a book that it was released this year. It was on the Goodreads thriller list. And actually that's where I've been getting a lot of my recent thriller reads, because I've just been looking for recent releases that I hadn't gotten around to. And what I have noticed, and I've noticed this since like last year, is if it has at least 4 stars on Goodreads, I am almost guaranteed to like the book. So I've noticed that all Goodreads books with 4 stars and above, I've actually enjoyed. And then if it has like a 3 point something and lower, forget about it. I've always hated those books. So I have decided that from now on, I'm only going to pick books that have 4-star and above on Goodreads. Okay, so Rock, Paper, Scissors, this is the first book I've ever read by this author. I don't believe this is her first book by any means. And to summarize this book in a couple sentences, so we have a married couple and they're going away to this like converted church bed and breakfast in the middle of Scotland, and they're driving. The weather is awful. Of course, we set up a thriller this way. It's a ton of rain, and I think eventually a snowstorm kind of pulls in, and they're in this like rickety old car. And this is their last ditch attempt to save their marriage. So the wife is like convinced that this is going to be the last straw to save their marriage. Now the husband is a screenwriter and he's obsessed with his work, but he also has this condition where he can't actually recognize faces. So he is unable to recognize the people in his life, including his own wife. Their faces are kind of like this swirl or blur where he can't actually recognize them or tell who they are. And the book has a dual timeline, so it's set in the past and the present, where in the past we are learning about their marriage over the course of the 10 years. And so each year, each throwback is like a year in their marriage, where it's an anniversary, and every anniversary the wife writes a letter to her husband that he is not ever really meant to read, but you can kind of see their marriage progressing over the course of the letters, over the course of those 10 years. Now they're at the house and just a bunch of random scary things begin to happen. You know, lights are going out, strange neighbors are peering into the house, etc. As far as thrillers go, I actually thought this one was pretty good. And again, it had over 4 stars on Goodreads, which is why I picked it up in the first place. The pacing was pretty moderate. I wouldn't say this was a can't put down gripping thriller, which are the thrillers that I really prefer, which is why this is not like a 5-star read for me. I think if you like domestic thrillers, you're definitely going to enjoy this. And I will say, one of the reasons this is probably really highly rated is because the twist is very well done. I don't think that most people would be able to predict it. And we all know that a good twist is what makes a good thriller. And it wasn't forced, like the maidens over there. But yeah, it was very well done. And so this was a 4-star read. I did enjoy it and I would recommend it. Next book, let's talk about Billy Summers by Stephen King. So this came out way back in August and I did read it. I don't know if it was in August or September, but I did read it a couple of months ago. This is Stephen King's latest book. Now I remember because I had filmed a video where I was talking about TBR and this was on it and I read the synopsis. And the problem with the synopsis of this book is that it gives away nothing. It's so confusing. And so you don't really know what to expect. And I'll be pretty much just as brief. So in a quick summary, Billy Summers, he is a gun for hire and he was hired to do a job and it's his last job. So like he's saying this is my last job. But it's like a very, very public murder. And he's going into it and he's talking about his thoughts, but he feels really iffy about the whole situation. So he doesn't trust the people that hired him or the people that he is working for to get him out of the situation safely. And so he's kind of relying on himself to do that. And really that does set the stage for the entire story, but it's a long book, so there's obviously way more to it, but you can't really go into it without giving away spoilers. So I guess that is why the synopsis is so short. One thing it does say that is that this is like a small town love letter, we know King loves his small towns. So I will say one of the things I really liked about this book is the relationships that Billy develops with his neighbors in the small town that he kind of tries to infiltrate. Yeah, so the relationship with the neighbors, there are a couple of children in the neighborhood that he also becomes really friendly with. And those interactions really add depth to the character, which becomes really important later on. And they just make you feel for him a little bit more because, you know, he is a killer. Eventually in the book though, there's another main character that enters the story. And so you don't really know about her until you actually read the book. But she eventually plays a pretty large role in the rest of the story for like the last 2/3 of the book or so. And I did like their storyline together. Billy ends up having to watch out for her. And again, it begins to humanize him a little bit more too. I would say with this book, much of the suspense, and it is a relatively suspenseful book, and I think that King does a good job of kind of bringing you back to the story, is wondering whether or not he's actually going to get away with the situation that he's in, whether he's going to get caught by other people, by the police, etc. Yeah, that's kind of a lot of the suspense of the story. King does a good job of not necessarily always ending the book on a happy-go-lucky note, and I would say that that does not happen here. Overall, I will say I enjoyed this book. There are a lot of 1-star reviews on Amazon, and it's very political. So over the last couple of books of his, Stephen King has been mentioning Trump in a lot of his books. So a lot of people don't like that. So if you don't like that, just be aware that he does do that in this book. For me, I just gloss over it. Like it's not enough for me to put the book down and give it a 1-star. All right, third book on my list is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. And this is a pretty popular book. That's the reason why I picked it up. I had never read anything by Lucy Foley before. And this was really popular on BookTube, I believe. But for me, it was kind of a letdown. So actually, I had just read And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I think it was last year, I can't remember. It was my first and only so far Agatha Christie book. And this book reminded me of that one in a lot of ways, mostly because the setups are really similar. So in this book, there is a wedding on a remote island. So everyone is they gather there, they're kind of trapped on that island, and then someone dies. So that's very similar to the And Then There Were None, where people just start dying on this like remote island. So this story is told from the perspective of a lot of different people. It jumps between the wife, the groom, the bridesmaid, the best man, and I think there's like one other character that also gets in on it. For me, I found it really difficult to keep track of all of these characters, and part of it is because probably I listened to this on audiobook for the most part, but to be honest, I didn't like the story enough to actually sit down with the physical book and read this. So the only way that I was gonna finish this book was by listening to the audiobook. Overall, this was a very forgettable story, and I say that because I'm sitting here and I don't even remember how it ended. But I do remember that I was not impressed when I got to the end of this book. So I'd say this is a 3-star read. I don't think I could actually recommend this. Certainly not over other thrillers that I have read that are way more enjoyable than this book was. Actually, I would say even Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None was better. So if you want a story like this, just pick that one up and just leave this one alone. Next, we have Tell Me by Anne Fraser. So this is a sequel to Find Me by Anne Fraser, which is a book that I read last year, and it was like a 5-star read for me. It was an excellent, excellent book. This is the sequel, and as sequels tend to go, it doesn't live up to the original. That being said, it was still a good book. So in this book, we pick up not too long after the events of the last book. So it's the same main character, the detective, or she's an FBI agent, I believe, whose father was sort of the big deal in the first book. And she gets called because there are a bunch of teenagers who are like addicted to their cell phones, and their parents send them to this program where they have to hike the Pacific Crest Trail without their technology. And the leader of that hike, who works for the program, she turns up dead, and then the girls are missing. So much of the book is just trying to figure out where did these girls go and who was responsible for the events that led to the death of that group leader. As far as thrillers go, this was a pretty decent one. Again, it doesn't really live up to the first book in the series. I still highly, highly recommend that first book. And then this one was okay. I did enjoy it though. It's a part of Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Kindle Unlimited, it is worth reading. And if anything, I think that it was a really interesting commentary on kind of the obsession with social media and likes and followers and views that teenagers kind of have in this day and age, and sort of the lengths that they'll go to for that sort of thing. All right, fifth, another Kindle Unlimited read. This is No More Words by Carrie Lonsdale. This is also part of Kindle Unlimited, and this is part 1 in what seems to be what will be a 2-part series. Part 2 has not been released yet. And this is a pretty recent read for me. So I just finished this book, I think, sometime in November. So it was only a week or 2 ago that I read this book. So a little bit of backstory. The main character, she is a woman. She's like in her 30s. And then her nephew just shows up on her doorstep one day. So it is the son of her estranged sister. And so the nephew shows up, and it turns out that his mom / her sister is missing. He doesn't know where she is. She kind of just disappeared one day. But also he can't really talk because he suffers some sort of head injury where he can't find the right words that he needs to say. So they've got a situation on their hands. So now she's tasked with trying to find her sister, basically. And as she's trying to do that, there's a lot of like family drama that starts to come to light, some family secrets that she discovers along the way. This book is actually, it kind of mixes thriller and romance because there's a bit of a romance storyline with the main character and like her childhood best friend. And it was a more significant part of the story than is typical for thrillers. Now, generally speaking, this book kind of really dragged. There was a point where I considered DNFing, and if I considered DNFing, that means that probably I can't recommend it. It just got really boring and repetitive, and it was too long for the story that it was. And I don't feel like the ending really paid off in the way that it should have for how long the author dragged this out. I'm definitely not gonna pick the second book up in this series. I don't really wanna read it after this first one. And the last set of books that I'll talk about are actually sort of a series. This is also Kindle Limited. This is the Bone, it's like the Bone series. Oh, it's called Widow's Island novella. So this is a novella. It's two different authors that actually write this. Melinda Lay is one of them, and I forget the name of the other author. I've never read books by the second author, but I love Melinda Lay. I've read a lot of her books. I'm currently in the middle of one of her series. She's pretty prolific on Kindle Unlimited. But they're really short, so they're novellas. I think they're like 100 pages-ish, if not even a little less than that. And so they're set on these islands in the Pacific Northwest. And each of these books just follows this FBI agent and this detective that are on the island, and they're just solving crimes, basically. Either crimes that are really old or current crimes. Yeah, that's what they are. They're just crime books that are really short, following these detectives. So if you like crime novels and you like small town settings, and you want a short read, I would recommend these. I enjoyed them, and if I'm looking for something nice and quick, I would pick one of these up. I haven't finished the series yet. I've read the first 3 books in the series. And then I took a pause to read some other things, but if I'm in the mood for something else like that, I'll probably continue to pick those books up. All right, guys, that is the end of this video. Those are all of the sort of thriller books that I've read recently. Stay tuned. I'm going to be filming my recent read romance books. And then I really need to start working on sort of my end of the year wrap up, because it is December. And so we are actually getting into 2022 really soon. I can barely believe it. In the meantime, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.